All right, good morning, Integrated 2. Today we're going to be completing the square. So as I go through this, the steps to doing this, there's a lot of steps. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to go through the first example. So if you look on the other side of the page or on the next page, we've got this example right here. I'm going to go through those just as I'm explaining the steps. I think it's going to make a little more sense that way. After I do that, then we can get into some more examples. All right, so the first step. There's a bunch of stuff that they have written right there. I want you to scribble that out or erase it. The first thing we're going to do is rewrite the equation as x squared plus bx equals c. Okay, so what that means is we're getting all of our terms with an x on one side of the equal sign, and then c, remember c is that number without an x, we're going to get that on the other side. All right, and as far as all the problems that we're dealing with today, a, the number in front of x squared, is already going to equal 1. Notice we've got our invisible 1 right here. And then our example, we've got that invisible 1. Eventually that will not happen, but today don't worry about that too much. But that is a step we'll have to keep in mind for next time. And then it says we might have to either add or subtract to put c on the right side of the equation, or the right side of our equal sign. Well, in this case we don't. Right, because looking at our example right here, our c, that number that does not have an x attached to it, that's already on the right side, so we don't need to do anything for that. So step 1 is done. Okay, step 2, find b over 2, and b over 2 squared. Remember, b is the number that is in front of just the x. Don't forget to include the sign. Right, so we're looking at this number right here. So that tells us that b is negative 6. Therefore, b divided by 2 is negative 6 divided by 2, which is negative 3. And then b over 2 squared, well, that would be this guy squared. So that would be negative 3 squared, which is negative 3 times negative 3, which makes a positive 9. Okay, step 3. Is we are going to substitute that b over 2 squared into the blank. So think about what we're actually doing. What we're actually doing is we're adding that number to both sides of the equation. Okay, that's our b over 2 squared. That's this guy right here. That's our 9. So I'm going to take my equation from above, and we're going to add 9 to both sides. And then negative 5 plus 9, we can go ahead and simplify that. Negative 5 plus 9 is positive 4. Okay, so this is saying I am adding b over 2 squared to both sides. Again, notice that I added b over 2 squared. I added 9 on both sides. All right, factor the left side of the equation. All right, whenever you see equal sign in the notes, that just means the left side of the equation, or the stuff on the left of the equal sign. The answer will be x plus b over 2, and then that whole thing squared. All right, so b over 2 was this guy right here, so that was negative 3. So that would be x plus negative 3. You know, if you're adding a negative, that is the same as subtracting, so that would just be x minus 3, and then that whole thing squared. So it would be x minus 3, that whole thing squared, and that equals all this other stuff. But we already simplified that, right? That was our negative 5 plus 9. So it is equal to 4. So what I just did was I simplified this into that. All right? By doing x plus b over 2 squared. Notice x plus b over 2, right? Because that's where that negative 3 came from. That was our b over 2. The final step is solve using square roots. Okay, so we are going to take the square root of both sides. So this is step 5. I'm going to do it in yellow. So we are taking the square root on both sides. So that gives me x minus 3 equals, but wait a minute, remember what happens whenever we take a square root? There's going to be that plus or minus, so we're going to have two separate equations here. So let's split this into two separate equations. We've got x minus 3 equals a positive 2, or we've got x minus 3 equals negative 2. Either way, we are one step away, so that's going to make x equals 5. And then we can add 3 over here as well. And negative 2 plus 3 is 1. And those are going to be our two solutions. All right, so that's what all there is to it. So we're going to get C on the opposite side. So we're going to get, step 1 is get all the x's on one side and the numbers on the other. Step 2, find b over 2, and b over 2 squared. Step 3, you're going to add b over 2 squared to both sides. Step 4, you're going to factor the left side of the equal sign. And step 5, we're going to take the square root on both sides and then split it into two equations with that plus or minus and solve. If you want to write all those steps down or like maybe rephrase it in a way that makes a little more sense, you're welcome to pause the video, listen to my explanation, write that down. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and go through the rest of the examples. All right, so this example, that's the one we just did, so I'm not going to do that one again. Let's go ahead and look at this next one. All right, so I need all my x's on one side, all my numbers on the other. That's step 1. So we're going to take care of this 43 first. We're going to add that on both sides. It's going to give me x squared plus 4x equals 45. And I need to find b over 2, and b over 2 squared. All right, remember your b is just that number that is multiplied by the x. So b equals 2. Oh, not 2, 4. Then b over 2 would be half of 4, which is 2. And b over 2 squared, that would be taking this guy and squaring it. So 2 times 2, and that ends up just being 4. All right, so we did that. That's step 2. If we look at step 3, that was right here. So that is where we added b over 2 squared to both sides. So we're going to add this guy to both sides. We're adding 4 to both sides of our equation. So I have x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals, and I'm adding 4 to the other side as well, so that 45 becomes a 49. All right, that was step 3. Step 4, you're going to factor the stuff on the left. Remember, the stuff on the left is always going to be a perfect square, and it is specifically, it is in the form of x plus b over 2, and that whole thing is squared. All right, so b over 2, it is 2. So that's going to be x plus 2, and then that whole thing is squared, equals 49. All right, that was step 4. Step 5, we're taking the square root on both sides, and we're going to split that into our two equations. So step 5, take our square roots and split it into two equations. So we're going to have x plus 2 equals positive 7. X plus 2 equals negative 7. And the 7 comes from because that's the square root of 49, right? Because 7 times 7 is 49. And then again, we are one step away. Subtract the 2 on both of these, and we'll get x equals 5. Subtract the 2 on this one, and you will get x equals negative 9. All right, next example. This one's going to be the exact same thing. All right, so we get all of our x's on one side, all the numbers on the other. So we're going to take care of that 58 first. Minus 58, minus 58. So I got x squared minus 14x equals negative 48. Again, you're always welcome to use your calculators on this. If you have any sort of discomfort working with the negative numbers, adding and subtracting negative numbers, you can always use calculators. You can use them on the tests. You can use them on the finals. You can use them on the state tests. So, yes, use calculators. Step number 2, find b, which is our negative 14 right here. Find b over 2, so to cut that in half, negative 7. And find b over 2 squared. So we're squaring this guy. Negative 7 times negative 7 is a positive 49. All right, step 3. We are going to add b over 2 squared on both sides. So that is adding 49 on both sides. So I'm going to add a plus 49 over here, and I'm going to add 49 over here. If I have negative 48 and I add 49 to it, that gives us a positive 1. Step 4, we're going to factor the stuff on the left. Remember, it's x plus b over 2, and that whole thing squared. All right, b over 2 is negative 7, so it's going to be x minus 7, that whole thing squared, equals 1. And then again, the final step, we will take the square root on both sides, split it into two separate equations. You have equals +1 and equals -1. Add the 7 on both sides. 1 plus 7 is 8. Add 7 on both sides. -1 plus 7 is 6. All right, we got a couple more examples here. And again, these are, at this point, this is practice. If you feel comfortable doing this, if you think you got the steps, you're welcome to pause the video, give it a try, see how you feel, and then come back and check the steps. But I'm looking at these, and this is the exact same thing that we've been doing. It's that exact same process. All right, so step 1, get all the x's on one side, and let me switch colors, and get all the numbers on the other side. So we're going to add that 66 onto both sides. And you'll get m squared minus 14m equals 6 plus 66, which is 72. Step number 2, find b. Find b over 2. Find b over 2 squared. All right, step 3, you're going to add b over 2 squared to both sides. Add this guy on both sides. 72 plus 49 is 121. Step 4, you're going to factor. Remember, it's x, or it's the variable plus b over 2, that thing in parentheses, and then square it. b over 2 is -7, so it's going to be m minus 7 squared equals 121. All right, step 4, take our square root. And step 5, we are going to solve. All right, so we got m minus 7 equals, the square root of 121 is 11. And we also have -11. So add the 7 on both sides, that gives you 18. Add the 7 on both sides, that gives you -4. All right, 2 more. Step 1, get the number to the other side. We're going to add 32. Add 32. b squared minus 10v equals 39. Step 2, we're going to find b. So -10. Find b over 2. So cut that guy in half. That gives you -5. And b over 2 squared. So we're going to take this guy, square it. -5 times -5 is a positive 25. And step number 3, we're going to add that to both sides. Add b over 2 squared to both sides. So we're going to add 25 over here. 39 plus 25 is 64. Step 4, take the square root. Oh no, step 4 is not yet. Step 4, factor. All right, that is v plus b over 2, and that in parentheses, and then square it. b over 2 is -5, so it's going to be b minus 5. That in parentheses squared equals 64. Step number 5 is take a square root and split up the equations to solve. So you got v minus 5 equals 8. v minus 5 equals -8. Right, because the square root of 64, that is where we're splitting it up into that +8 and that -8. And our last step, add 5 on both sides. So that would give us v equals 13 over there. And then that would give us v equals -3 over here. All right, one more. First step, get all the numbers on the same side. So let's add 24. N squared plus 14n equals 32. Step 2, find b. So that's going to be our 14. Find b over 2. Cut that in half. That's 7. Find b over 2 squared. It's going to be 49. All right, step 3, add this guy on both sides. So we're going to add 49 on both sides. 32 plus 49 is 81. Step 3. Oh no, I keep forgetting the number of the steps. Step 4, you're going to factor. All right, you're going to factor. So factoring, that is n plus b over 2, and then that whole thing squared. All right, that's where we use this guy. So it's going to be n plus b over 2, which is 7. And then that whole thing squared equals 81. And then our last step, we get to take the square root and split it into two different equations to solve. So square root of 81 is 9. It's going to be a plus or minus 9. And then we just subtract our 7 on both sides. So we get n equals 2. And then negative 9 minus 7 is negative 16. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. Make sure you follow the process carefully. As long as you follow the process, hopefully I was able to make those steps relatively straightforward. But the main thing is you keep that first page with you so that way you're able to look at each step we're going through. All right, so our first step is get all our x's on one side, the numbers on the other. Our second step is finding those key numbers, or b over 2, b over 2 squared. Our third step is add that b over 2 squared on both sides of the equation. Our fourth step is factor, but remember the factoring is just a formula, right? It's the variable plus that b over 2 number and then that whole thing squared. And then the fifth step is you're going to take a square root of both sides, split it into two equations, and then from there it's just a one-step equation to solve it. All right, please let me know if you have any questions, and that is all we've got for today.